Hey, good morning. I'm Patricia Murphy. It's Wednesday. This is Seattle Now. There's a food fight heating up at Seattle Public Schools. More of a lunch fight, really. High school students are upset about a new district policy that will split lunch into 2 periods.
With the new lunch schedule, a lot of the teachers that we want to talk to during lunch aren't going to be available because they'll be teaching another class while we have lunch. So, yeah, that's annoying.
In a minute, we'll hear from students and talk with Seattle Times education reporter Claire Bryant. But first, let's get you caught up. If you're headed to Bellevue from Seattle or Mercer Island this month, prepare for delays. WashDOT says eastbound I-90 will be down to 3 lanes and 45 miles an hour starting Thursday night. It'll jam things up until Sunday, October 5th, as crews work to replace the expansion joint on the floating bridge. Heads up, Seattle Parks and Recreation is warning, watch out for dive-bombing owls. The notice came after a reported owl attack at Lincoln Park. Apparently, the shortening days of fall make these attacks more common. Seattle Parks recommends staying alert in the early morning and at night. Keep your head covered and move along if you hear hooting, and wave your arms if an owl does swoop. And you've got 5 days left to get to the Washington State Fair in Puyallup. It all ends this Sunday, but there are still plenty of rides, eats, and activities left to check out. It includes performances by AJR, T-Pain, Joel McHale, and Darius Rucker. Check back for more headlines on tonight's episode of Seattle Now.
Yo. What do we want? One. What do we want? One. When do we want it?
Hundreds of Seattle high school students walked out of class this week and gathered at district headquarters in SoDo. They were protesting a change to the lunch schedule at several high schools. District officials want to split a single lunch period in 2. They say the goal is to lessen crowds and lunch lines and comply with state law. But many students are unhappy. They're worried about not being able to attend clubs, which often meet during lunchtime, and being split up from their friends. Seth Gobush is a sophomore at Ingram High School. At Monday's rally, he talked about the challenge of splitting up club members between 2 lunch periods.
Like half the people will be lunch A, lunch B. You have no control really over where or who you're with. And it makes it impossible for us to meet together and have these community building interactions.
District officials have suggested that clubs could meet before or after school. But for Hannah Evans, who's a sophomore at Lincoln High School, it just isn't possible.
Like, I'm in jazz and vocal jazz before school, and I have volleyball every day after school, and so there's no way for me to do that as a student, and I know a lot of other students are also in the same position.
Claire Bryant covers education for the Seattle Times. She's here now to break down this lunchtime drama. Claire, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, really appreciate it. So let's start with the new policy from the district. Tell listeners more about what's changing.
Yes, so at 7 high schools across the district, they're changing from 1 30-minute lunch period to 2. So there'll be 2 different times in the day where kids are going to lunch for 30 minutes. A couple high schools already have this in place or have already tried it out, but for a majority of the students, thousands of students in the district, this will be new. They're going to be split up from their friends and in 2 different periods throughout the day, but lunch is staying the same amount of time, 30 minutes.
Okay. And we mentioned it briefly at the top, but let's talk more about why the district's doing this.
So the district says that it's doing this because of state law and district policy that requires a certain amount of time for students to get lunch and eat. The minimum is 20 minutes, and at some schools, they're feeling like the lines are so long that it's not enough time for students to adequately get lunch, eat it, and have time to go to the bathroom, passing period, get to their next class. They've also pointed to some potential safety concerns. It's a lot of kids moving through, and so they felt like it would just be better to be standard across all high schools, 2 different lunches. It allows all kids to get through and get lunch and have enough time.
Claire, why do the students hate this so much?
There's a few different reasons. One is that they're worried that the club membership is going to go down because clubs meet during lunch, and they feel like either they'll have to meet before or after school, or they'll have to split the club into 2 different groups meeting at 2 different times, and just less students are going to participate in clubs. And extracurriculars clubs are a really big deal for students. They also feel like they won't have time to meet with their teachers and get extra help on homework or tutoring or retaking tests because that happens during lunch. And if some teachers are teaching classes during that second lunch period and they don't line up with their teacher, then their teacher might be busy teaching kids when they have lunch, so they don't have time for that. And then they're also just sad about not being able to socialize with their friends, but also just an opportunity to be in the same space with everyone throughout the whole high school together, all at the same time. They feel like that creates bonding and school community, and they feel like if they're split into 2 lunch periods, it's just not quite the same.
Were you surprised at how upset students were about this?
Yeah, I think I was surprised. I think the administration was probably surprised. I think maybe common Seattleites would be surprised. But honestly, to teachers, staff, parents, students, I don't think they were surprised. I think they knew how important one lunch was.
All right. And this was so upsetting to students. They walked out of school Monday to protest the policy. Let's talk about what happened this week.
Yeah, so hundreds of students left school around 11 a.m. and took transit or their own car down to the Seattle Public School headquarters and was rallying and protesting outside. The interim superintendent met with some students inside to talk about why this change was made, but the students were loud and clear. They really want one lunch. They feel like that allows enough students to participate in clubs, that allows them to get help with extra homework or tutoring that they need from their teachers, and it allows them to socialize with everyone in the school and sit, with whoever they want at the school.
As we mentioned, other Seattle high schools are already doing this. What have you heard? Has it been a problem?
Garfield High School is an interesting school to look at because they have for many, many years had one lunch, but for the past 2 years did have 2 lunches. And then this year they started out with one lunch this year. So I talked to a counselor there who shared how, it's a complicated issue, but when they have had 2 lunches, they have made it work to a certain extent of clubs meeting before and after school. Sometimes they've had this advisory period where they've gotten to meet then. Garfield doesn't have advisory this year, so that adds a further complication. So it is complicated, and in schools where this has happened in the past, Rainier Beach, Franklin, Garfield have already had this on the south end. Students have also been resistant, and it's been hard. But, we talked to a student that vocalized how they maybe complained when this happened at their schools, but no one really listened or made a big fuss about it. And now that it's happening to all high schools, including the high schools on the north end, there's a lot more student involvement, and they're being listened to a certain extent more by the public and by the school district leaders.
It's interesting because it's hard to overestimate how upset young people can get about things, and also how important these things feel to students. Is there a possibility that Seattle Public Schools could back down from this change?
Right now, they are still moving forward. On Monday, they said that the plan will continue as forward, but it will be pushed back to give schools some flexibility. Principals asked for some more time. It was supposed to happen on Monday, but now they have a few more weeks to roll it out. But as we know, Seattleites probably are familiar with SPS walking back on a plan, so it could happen.
Okay, well, you also talked with parents who are upset about this change. What did you hear from them?
Yeah, parents were concerned, firstly that the district wasn't listening to the students or doing what felt like what's in the best interest for students. They also vocalized some concerns just about, after the pandemic, students spend so much time even in school behind their laptops on their devices, and they felt like if this is an time during the school day where kids are really excited to be socializing and be all together as one school community, why can't we just give that to them? They felt like it was such a positive thing for students and how they were bonding together, and they felt concerned that this would mess that up.
All right. Well, clearly there's no one-size-fits-all solution for this, Claire, at least for the district and for the students. The kids have walked out. The district says it's not changing the policy. What else should we know about where this story might be going before we let you go?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of watching to see if the district is going to make any changes. The school board is going to be meeting on Wednesday, and I'm curious to see if they're going to address it. It's not on the agenda, but I have a feeling that maybe someone during public comments is going to bring this up. The board has been clear about the fact that they were not involved in this decision, but now, a couple of board members have gotten involved. They hosted a town hall. They're really trying to listen to students and parents. So I'm curious to see if the board is going to step in and do anything. And yeah, there quite possibly could be further developments.
Claire Bryan, Seattle Times education reporter, really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Seattle Now. Today's episode was produced by Andy Hurst with reporting from Noelle Gasca. It was edited by Caroline Chamberlain-Gomez. Our production team also includes Vaughn Jones, Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers, and Paige Browning. Greg Kramer does our theme music. Seattle Now and KUOW Public Radio are members of the NPR network. I'm Patricia Murphy. See you soon.